Politics Midweek Update special edition here. We're kind enough to be joined by Congressman Mark Alford from the western part of the state. Kelton, let's bring in Congressman Alford.
Thank you.
Congressman, how are you?
I am, well, I'd like to say I'm doing great, but I just got out of a 2.5 hour long meeting in the basement, basically under the House chamber where our conference met with our Speaker designate, Steve Scalise. We're trying to hash out why he cannot get to 217 and get this vote on the floor and get it done, get it over the finish line. So I feel good. We've got a lot of work to do. Our world is on fire, and we got a ship without a rudder. So we need
So
to get
to me, it looks like this is what happens. The House needs a little bit bigger majority, right? Because when it has a small majority, you can have folks coming out of the woodwork, and it's their time to shine. Is what it feels like.
Well, we certainly did. Back a year ago, Scott, we were talking about, and we kind of thought we are going to have this red wave. It turned out,
Yeah.
the case we had instead I call it a red tide that has sucked the oxygen basically out of our majority. It is almost impossible to rule with a 5-seat majority, and because of that, Kevin McCarthy made concessions early on, whether rightly or wrongly, to get the Speaker's chair and the gavel. He gave in on this motion to have one person be able to call to vacate the chair, basically a vote to fire the Speaker if they didn't like the way things were going. And Matt Gaetz called for that after threatening it for a long time. And for the first time ever, the Speaker of the House was fired. And so we have a Speaker pro tem right now, Patrick McHenry, with very little constitutional powers at all, basically a clerk up there ruling the gavel in and out. And so we desperately need a Speaker.
To me, if Matt Gaetz was at Fitter's in Sedalia, he might make it 2 beers before he got punched in the face. What kind of old boy is that guy to actually be around?
Well, back in my day, I had good-looking hair like him. He has good-looking hair.
That's fair.
He is smart as a whip. He is a master elocution. I don't know if that's the right word. He's a very good speaker. Let's put it that way.
We might call it a smart ass in Missouri.
I saw that today in conference. He is behind Steve Scalise in this, and
That's commendable, right? I mean, he did kind of break it, so at least he's on board with trying to fix it, right?
The problem is, all right, so here's the deal, Scott. There is a mistrust and there's a lack of communication within our conference. I've been married 34 years. I've been through a lot of marriage counseling. I know a marriage cannot survive, really any relationship, whether it's business, friendship, U.S. House of Representatives, Republican Conference. You cannot survive without those two things, communication and trust. So how does Steve Scalise bring back those two things that have been lost? How do you convince someone that you are not going to be part of the past, you're going to be part of the future to help change things here? Not all at once, but maybe incrementally to change things, to bring about the way that our body should be functioning.
Well, let me ask this, Congressman. Who are you for? I guess it was a guy named Jim Jordan ran against Mr. Scalise, right? Who are you for in that race?
Well, I voted for Jim Jordan. We had a secret. I did vote for him. But now
you decided to support Steve Scalise, right?
Oh, yeah, because that's the way our rules work. See, in conference, we have rules, and whoever came out the majority in that vote yesterday, we need to get behind. But there are people.
You can only lose 4 members, right?
Sir?
So you can only lose 4 members and still go forward, right?
I think that's it, 4 or 5, and we have 7 to 8 who are absolute no's right now. They're not going to vote for Steve Scalise.
I wouldn't ask you to talk out of school, but what would be the rationale for not at least having a speaker? Then, if he doesn't do whatever you want, kick him out a week from now, right?
Well, that's logical thinking, and I think we have some people who aren't thinking logically, who are thinking emotionally, and whether they're trying to raise money back home off grassroots digital fundraising, or so I truly believe some of these people are principled, that they truly want change, but the conference spoke. Steve Scalise won by a majority. It was a slight majority, but he still won. Kevin McCarthy won back in January. It was almost 90% of the conference voted for him. And yet it took us 15 votes on the House floor to get him in the Speaker's chair. The system is broken. There are some people who are not going to follow the rules. You know, as I do, in all levels of society, people just don't like following the rules. And they planted a flag. Steve Scalise is now meeting with them privately, trying to get to the what is it? It's not like selling a used car either. He doesn't have a 4 score out and he's like, what can I do to get you in this deal today? He wants to know, what do we need to do to make changes that you can get on board with my leadership? You're never
give me a prediction. You'll go home tomorrow, right?
No.
Staying in Washington. How long is it going to take to get a speaker?
That's a good question. The question now is, does Steve Scalise put the vote on the floor, as he is entitled to do, and make people come out for him or against him? The bad part about that is, as we saw in January, every time he does that, the Democrats get to nominate who they want. That's going to be Hakeem Jeffries, and they're going to get up and give these glowing speeches about Hakeem Jeffries. It's just sickening, and I don't want to listen to that. I don't think the American people want to listen to that. Let's elect a Republican speaker. We do have the majority.
Your advice to Steve Scalise would be, don't go to the floor without the votes, right?
Yes, sir. I think a lot of people feel that way. And if we have to stay here, here's the deal, Scott. We should never have left last week. We left. We abandoned our post. We should have stayed here. And I'm committed to stay here as long as it takes. Let's work 24 hours around the clock. But let's get a speaker. Our world is on fire right now. Israel needs our help. We cannot help them. They've got to rebuild this Iron Dome. We don't have the money appropriated yet to do that. And so we've got to realize that this is more than any one person in our conference. This is more about raising money. This is the survivability of the world and the U.S. protecting those who want democracy to have a foothold in our world.
So give me a prediction. Pull out your Stein of knowledge. How long will it take for you guys to come up with the votes you need to elect Steve Scalise?
I wish I could answer that. There's talk in the conference. Well, let's find someone who can. Maybe there's someone out there who no one's thought of yet that can get 217. So you're going to put someone in there who has absolutely no experience in any type of leadership, and just put them in this position. The third most powerful person in America is going to fill this seat. I don't think that's a great idea. I say let's put Steve Scalise in. Jim Jordan had his shot. He did not make it. He would have made a wonderful speaker. But Steve Scalise is now the designee. We need someone in there who can lead. He is not perfect, but I guarantee you, if Jesus Christ were elected from our conference, there would still be 20 holdouts that said he's not good enough.
So, I mean, it does seem almost like it's gallows humor. I mean, if whoever does get this job, how long can you go before the Addams Family guy from Florida or whatever throws a fit, or one of the freak show? I mean, how long? I mean, you don't have 217 Blaine Luchtemeyers. You have some flakes. How long before the flakes revolt over, I don't know, what color the upholstery is in the new office?
Well, Kevin had an anvil hanging over his head.
Yeah.
Like Roadrunner and Coyote. That anvil was hanging over his head the entire time. I would not want that job. I don't know why anyone would, except I don't think it's a power trip for either Steve Scalise or Jim Jordan. It is a love for their country. Steve is a survivor. He survived an assassination attempt on his life and barely died. He almost died at that baseball game practice shooting. And now he's battling blood cancer, which he has a great prognosis. The doctors now moved up his treatments from 6 months to 2 months. He's looking great, sounding great, has a lot of energy. My point is, these guys have a love for America in their hearts. It's not about selfish ambition. And we need to make sure that the rest of the people in our conference, it's not about selfish motives or ambition as well.
It is a great balcony, though.
The speaker's balcony, yes, it certainly is. And I will say that my son was up here last week, and we went to see Kevin on the day that he was fired, basically. In the morning we went there, and he took us out on the balcony, and it's the last picture, I think, he took a Speaker of the House on the speaker's balcony.
So tell me about Gaza. You were one of the, I mean, I don't know where you ranked in speed, but no grass grew under feet. You were immediately, I read it on Twitter, right out with a statement in support of Israel. What's the situation on the ground now in Gaza?
Well, it is dire right now. I've always stood by Israel, even when I was in the media. I think, personally, my belief in Jesus Christ and my belief as a God-fearing person, is that our nations are inextricably linked together. The providence and protection that God has shown us, I think, is directly attributable to our support for Israel, God's chosen
Well, there is
nation.
scripture that backs up that conclusion.
Exactly. And so, look, this is, and I know people are going to disagree. There's people watching right now who are going to disagree with that, but that's my personal belief, and we need to defend Israel at any cost. These 350,000 young men and women who are leading the military there to go in now in this uncertainty and to go in these caves and tunnels and try to extract these people who are trapped there. When you have 40 to 50 babies that have been butchered by these animals, these terrorists from Hamas, they're not militants, they're terrorists. This is insane that anyone would try to draw any type of moral equivalency between Palestinians and Israelis. The Israelis have tried to live in harmony. They have done everything they can, and I am sick of us pussyfooting around with these Islamic terrorists who want nothing more than to see us gone as a nation. It is time to act. It's time to wipe Hamas off the face of the earth.
I notice Israel declared war on Hamas, not on whatever ruling entity the Gaza Strip has. Recent history is not successful in declaring war on a terrorist movement. The United States has the greatest military in the history of the world. We declared war on the Taliban and we lost. Why would they win?
Well, that's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that.
I mean, we lost so bad. A lot of the ammunition, it looks like, that's being shot at Israelis came from when we retreated and left behind in Afghanistan.
Well, and I solely put that on the President of the United States.
Sure.
That's one of the reasons, Scott, I don't know if I ever told you this, but that was a defining moment when I decided I was going to enter this race. When I was looking at that TV set in my home and watching the President of the United States abandon our allies and leave 13 service members there to die on that wall, and then when their bodies come home, he's checking his watch to see what time it is. I said, that's it. That is not the America I want to live in. But what is Mark Alford going to do about it? You know, I was on TV. I had a secure career. I could have died on that news set, but I wanted to do something for my country. And you know that. And I think every member of our freshman class, this is what's so frustrating. Every member of our freshman class came here for the same reason, that our country is this close to going over the edge. And we felt a moral sense of responsibility to our nation to fight, to stand up and do something. And we gave up our careers. There was a lady from Texas gave up a $7 million state farm business to come here. We have all sacrificed to come here to do something. And when we are stymied in the basement below the House chamber and we don't have a House Speaker and people are like a bad marriage counseling session, it makes me sick to my stomach. Let's get on with the business of being a majority and making a difference in America. That's what I came here to do.
So, last question. There's some folks in the Republican Party that appear as though their support for Ukraine has waned, and that the argument is we should think of America first. There's well, as you know, there's folks in Bates County that could use the money that they're sending to Ukraine. Yeah. However, there's also now folks want to take that money that that was going to go to Ukraine, they want to bring back to Bates County and send it to Israel. What's the difference?
Well, look, this is apples and oranges. If you go Google Mark Alford in the Hill, I had a great editorial op-ed piece last month about the spending. I wanted to know, and I'm on the House Armed Services, how much money have we appropriated Congress, this and past Congress, to go to Ukraine? Out of that money, how much has been spent, how much is left over? $113 billion has been appropriated so far. $67 billion goes into direct military assistance. The president hasn't used up that yet, and he's coming to us wanting $20.6 billion more. He has slow rolled this thing. He has not sufficiently armed the Ukrainians. And so that's why I think they're kind of almost in a stalemate, even though they've had a slightly successful spring and summer offensive against Russia. We need to make sure that Ukraine wins this. We do not need Putin rolling over Ukraine and then Moldova, the Balkans, and then eventually Poland, because then we will have to get involved. And
yeah. At some point, he'll hit a country we care about.
Right. So my point is, Scott, and I'll make this short. I want to know for sure that the money we've spent so far has been used wisely. I want to make sure that the money we've appropriated is being spent and will be spent before we appropriate anything else. And most importantly, and I and many other members, including Jim Jordan, we want to know, what is the end game? American voters and taxpayers deserve to know what Zelensky feels like and our administration feels like is the end game in this. Is it taking back Bakhmut? Is it taking back the Donbass region? Is it taking back Crimea? But we deserve an answer before we put any more money into Ukraine.
Well, Congressman Mark Alford, thank you for the time. And I have a suggestion. Just lock those holdouts in a room with Ann Wagner and hold the door shut. I bet you they tap out.
I just saw Ann. She is a great member of our delegation. And I do want to say we have some great members in our delegation. Jason Smith, Blaine Luchtenmeyer, Sam Graves, the list goes on. And I'm just honored to be here to learn under them, to have them as friends and mentors. And we're trying to do great things, not just for our nation, but for the state of Missouri. And I appreciate you, Scott, for all you do.
Congressman, thank you for the time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
It was Congressman Mark Alford, very kind enough to take some time. I can't imagine the people pulling on them right now. I mean, it is, you hear what he says about how he's determined to make this look good and move forward. And you've got a few folks holding out still. I mean, my God, what do they want? Although if I was a big backer from the day of the previous speaker, I might say, well, it's my turn to throw a little fit. So be very interesting to see how long this takes. At some point, they'll want to go home. So maybe if they hold them there long enough, the holdouts will fall in line. Thank you, Congressman Alford, for the time. We appreciate it. Thank you, the Courtyard by Merit here in Jeff City and United Fiber for letting us come to you. Have a little special afternoon edition of This Week in Missouri Politics Midweek Update. We'll see you Sunday. We have Keith Beardsley gives us sort of the Israeli-American perspective. We have Naveen Aish gives Palestinian perspective. Plus, we had John Ratliff and Brianna Lennon came in and talked to us about just our general opinion maker panel. We'll see you Sunday on This Week in Missouri Politics.